Hi, and welcome back to Animal Liberation TV. So I'm going to start this podcast with a quote by Barry Horn, Mr. Barry Horn. Capitalism and animal abuse go hand in hand, and for them there is no profit in life, only death. No fast buck to be made from peace and compassion when money comes from suffering, pain and war. Amazing. I just love Barry lives on, man. I'm telling you, his ideas, and Barry's ideas are always in the thread of anarchism. And when I first got to know Barry, it was when we were both in prison, and we hadn't ever met each other in real life. We swapped lots of letters between us, pages and pages. We really hit it off in these letters, and through those letters, I remember being so inspired by his sense of anarchism, and very much how I felt as well. And we really bonded through our anarchism. And so it might be for people to say, well, what's any of this got to do with animal liberation? Well, in my opinion, everything. And so we find ourselves, and one thing I am happy to hear everyone saying, pretty much, is war in 2022. How is this happening? War in 2022. And there's a really very simple answer to that in anarchist thinking. And that is because despite all the so-called lessons that we've learned since World War II, and all these institutions like the United Nations and NATO, who billions and billions and billions of pounds of money has been poured into, turn out to be completely useless institutions, which they all are. And all of this goes to the heart of one thing: hierarchy. As long as you have hierarchy amongst us all, amongst the people living on this planet, in this world, we will have the same problems. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I'm not a supporter of the West or whatever in this situation, East versus West, which it looks like it's turning into some new Iron Curtain of God knows what is going on. But everyone, all these leaders have got blood on their hands, and that is because capitalism, which Russia, China, the West, whatever, every nation is a capitalist nation. And as long as you have capitalism, patriarchal capitalism, you will have abuse and hierarchy. And wherever you get hierarchy, you get abuse. It's a self-fulfilling, demonic situation we've got going on. I mean, like the term I've come up with recently, well, it's not my, the term that comes to mind, I didn't make it up, it's the lunatics have taken over the asylum. And that's exactly what it is, but it's not any laughing matter, is it? Because there's tangible, real suffering going on. Whenever you get state-run wars, oh, but Max, hang on a minute, Max. You say animal liberation is a war, but you say you're anti-war. Yeah, that's because a war by the people for the people to finish this nonsense once and for all, because the lessons that haven't been learned since World War II is how we let people get power. As long as you let people get any sort of power over anyone else, you get abuse, don't you? That's the root of speciesism, and that's why I firmly believe that anarchism has to be entwined absolutely as part of the animal liberation struggle. They are one thing. So we've got people with power who build up military states. We've got nationalism in each state. All of these things are enemies of freedom of the people. And a lot of people think anarchism is very complicated, and that's probably partly because if you ask an anarchist what anarchism is, you might not get the answer you want. You probably want something very specific. And also every anarchist is going to tell you a slightly different answer. And that's the beauty of anarchism, because it's about autonomy of the individual. However, anarchism is misunderstood. I raised my son raised my son up as an anarchist, and he has come up with this thing that anarchy isn't necessarily the same thing as anarchism, because sometimes people think anarchy and chaos. Whoa. Well, actually, real anarchism, would be very ordered. We'd have a couple of hours of the day, probably amongst us, each of us contributing to the running of the community, growing our own food, looking after the young, sick and old. And the rest of the time we have the time to daydream, play music, dance, be free, be creative, which is what human beings are here for. Each single one of us is a kind of walking miracle in a sense, aren't we? Like, how the fuck are we here? And each one of us is part of an anarchist ideology you believe has got some sort of genius and reason for being here, you know, to fulfill, and that should be allowed to flourish. But under the capitalist system, no, it's schooling, and then the wage slavery work system, and then you have police and prisons and governments and the war machine, which is central to it all. We are always at war as long as we have capitalism. All of these people are warmongers. You know, the West hasn't got a leg to stand on judging Russia in terms of, after the Iraq War, 1.5 to 2 million Iraqis were killed. Still lots of chaos there. And they were after the oil, come on, you know, and they didn't like Saddam because he'd let them down after they were backing him during the whole Iran-Iraq war. I mean, the whole thing about geopolitical stuff, it's all so twisted, it's all full of lies, and then the media, as we know from the last 2 years, pumps people full of fear generally. And I've had to stop watching this Ukraine business too closely now, because it's just really bad for my own psychological, spiritual well-being. My heart goes out to everyone there, and I do think that the one positive thing that I think is going to come out of this is that this is the start of a true wave of an anarchist uprising. There are quite a lot of anarchists in Ukraine, and historically there always have been. I'm going to talk about that briefly in a second. But I believe that lots of anarchists, in a few months' time, there's probably going to be areas of what was until very recently called Ukraine, areas that Russians can't control at all. I mean, this is just my prediction. There'll be enclaves, and what will happen is the resistance will start to form its own groupings, because you'll have nationalists. At the moment, you'll have nationalists working alongside communists, working alongside anarchists and socialists. And as the resistance goes on, they'll find they don't share the same aims and values, and they'll become an anarchist enclave and a communist enclave and nationalist enclave and so on of resistance areas. That's my prediction. I suspect there's going to be a long, protracted civil war, guerrilla war. The Russians will call it terrorism. The West might call it freedom fighting, and the truth will be somewhere in between. As always when you get this geopolitical stuff, because I'm not claiming to be any expert on geopolitical stuff or what's going on. I don't need to be, because the root of this is simple. It's hierarchy and power, especially men, you know. I don't believe in any hierarchy, but if we swapped all the hierarchies that is now in place and we swapped women for the men that are in all those positions, I think there would be some improvement. But the hierarchy still needs to all go, because no one should be in charge of anyone else. And people say to me, well, how is that going to work, Max, if you haven't got police and prisons? What's going to happen to all the rapists and murderers? That's the most common thing people say. Well, we need a new justice system, don't we? Something people agree with. And I'm not going to, I have some ideas that some people might not agree with what should happen to people like rapists and paedophiles and granny muggers and people who are really dirty, low-life, antisocial people. I think very strict examples should be set. Certainly not the lenient prison sentences that people get in British justice, under British justice, or escape forever like Jimmy Savile. So many questions can be raised about the British justice system, but anyway. So that would have to be replaced, not by mob or community justice, but by a set of understood and agreed ideas that keep society safe and instill some fear in people who are thinking about doing bad stuff. As for prisons, I mean, the prison industrial complex is just another tool to keep the proletariat, the poor, the underclass, the working class. It's a tool designed to keep them oppressed. No more so in such an exemplified place than the USA, which has got the highest rate of individuals in the population incarcerated, and they're basically it's just slavery being replaced, because those prisoners, mostly of Afro-American origin, because of ghettoization, because of slavery, because of racism, because of nationalism, because of nation states, because of hierarchy. And this is the other thing. Oh, anarchism gets so complicated. No, it doesn't. It's just about being nice. It's just about being nice and enjoying life and not starting wars. Wars in 2022. Jesus Christ. A European war right on our doorstep. So anyway, I predict there'll be an anarchist enclave, and lots of anarchists from all around Europe will start pouring into there and get live weapon experiences and explosive experience, and there'll be a whole wave of potentially a little anarchist army rising up, and I'd like to see that rising up and taking over the whole of Europe and knocking every government off its pedestal. And okay, another thing people say, well, how would we run things? Okay, we swap current hierarchy, patriarchal capitalist governments oppressing us all with citizens' assemblies maybe. But that's for us all to decide together, isn't it? Once we overthrow these fuckers. But the idea should be thrown about now, so we've got some idea of preparation. We want to get rid of these people, and we hang them in the streets and make them accountable for their actions. Everyone that's been part of these institutions. I'm uncompromising in that. If that makes me sound like an extremist, well, if other people decide they should have different fate, then I go by what we all agree on between us. Mutual consent, It's going to be very difficult to work out some of these issues, and they might go on for decades, but I guarantee after 2 or 3 generations of living under as close to anarchism as we can get, things will have changed a lot. We'll forget about these concepts of work and wage slavery and money systems and banking and the war machine. After 3 generations living under anarchism, we would be getting closer to a more pure anarchism, I guarantee it. Because anarchism is about mutual aid. I think that anarchism is the natural human spirit. So, yeah, I mean, these are really crazy times, and we've just had 2 years of COVID, pandemic, whatever, lockdown, fucking vaccine mandate program things. Oh my God. So, the human psyche right now is being seriously oppressed, repressed, and taken to low vibrations through these fuckers, And there's not even that many of them. Come on, no government can run when the people decide they don't want it to run. They're not powerful enough, even with their military forces and police, if the consent of the people is against hierarchy in governments. And I'm pretty confident, looking on the positive side of this, because I'm trying to look at some positive side of it, that this is going to spark off a new wave of anarchist thinking and action, and I think it's going to grow in Ukraine in an enclave. It's going to spread back out around Europe, and hopefully there's going to be some anarchist bloody uprisings, because otherwise what is going to happen, this is just going to go on and on and on and on. Now, I've got to put a disclaimer in quickly. I'm not encouraging anyone to go to Ukraine and fight. Well, certainly not at the moment, because I think you're going to end up in big trouble, especially if you've not got quite good military training. But in a few months' time, when it's a bit safer. But I'm not encouraging people to do that, because it's actually illegal under international law to encourage people to go, because that's basically terrorism. So the last thing I'm doing is encouraging people to fight over there. Okay? So right, I'm going to take us over here, if I can get all these cables, because there's something I want to read out to you to finish this episode off. I mean, this is just me ranting my some thoughts on the moment right now, but we can't make any progress towards animal liberation whilst we have wars that break out, that break international laws and treaties and whatever else. Society is so destabilised by state-run wars that we can't. It sets all moral social progress back, doesn't it? And that's never going to stop unless we overthrow these governments. And I'm not inciting revolution or treason or whatever. Okay, right now, see if I can read this to you. The Revolutionary Insurgent Army of Ukraine, also known as the Black Army, was an anarchist army formed largely of Ukrainian peasants and workers during the Russian Civil War of 1917 to 1922, exactly 100 years ago. Okay, and I found about this recently. Nestor Makhno, I don't know if you pronounce that, Ukrainian anarchist revolutionary 1888 to 1934. He was a Ukrainian anarchist revolutionary and the commander of an independent anarchist army in Ukraine from 1917 to 21. And they had between 15,000 and 110,000 troops at different times. And they had a battle with what was called the Red Army and the White Army lots of times, and the anarchist army was known for being victorious in loads of battles. I mean, can you imagine 110,000 anarchists? Woo-hoo-hoo. And what I'm saying is, I'm speculating, I'm not encouraging it, I'm speculating that maybe that is something that will come out of this and will overthrow these regimes once and for all and prevent these wars, and at the same time be furthering our proximity towards animal liberation, trust me. So he wrote some really good stuff. Anarchism's outward form is a free, non-governed society which offers freedom, equality and solidarity for its members. Its foundations are to be found in man's sense of mutual responsibility, which has remained unchanged in all places and times. This sense of responsibility is capable of securing freedom and social justice for all men, let's say people these days, or the translation might be biased, by its own unaided efforts. It is also the foundation of true communism. Anarchism is as revolutionary, as diverse and as sublime in every facet as is human life itself. I love anarchism because it's just so free in every sense. This guy is a don, I'm telling you. I would still call on you, reader and brother, to take up the struggle for the ideal anarchism, for only if you fight for this ideal and uphold it will you understand it properly. Oh, that is so true. That is so true. Liberation under the management of any government or political setup, what's that got to do with freedom? Oh, this guy's good. From these unfolding vistas of human misery and from personal misery, man must forge convictions, call other people his brethren, I'm going to change it slightly, and fight for freedom. People are only free if they are prepared to kill every hangman and every power magnate, if they do not wish to stop their shameful tasks. That's kind of what I was saying before about hanging them all, isn't it? He is only free if he does not put a prime on changing his government and is not led astray by the workers' republic of the Bolsheviks. He must vouch for the establishment of a truly free society based on personal responsibility, the only real free society. His pronouncement on the state must be one of total destruction. Is it? You know, like, I wish I'd met this guy, but it doesn't matter because we still, you know, we'll all have contact. All us anarchists will have contact with each other through history. We're all playing our part. Hopefully, we're going to grow into like a worldwide thing because of this. Because people don't want war. People don't want war. And I've travelled enough around Europe, especially. Everyone I ever meet, I get on with. You know, of course, you get nationalists everywhere. You know, which is basically a product of poverty, the media, and governments telling people they should be proud of their nation and to hate everyone else. That's what the media does, makes people racist, doesn't it? Anyway, so people get on everywhere you go. That's what I find. People will be interested in what your life's like. What do you do? What's it like back there? You know, like people swap stories. People like meeting each other. We're sociable creatures. It's only a few handful of fuckers that are ruining it for the rest of us. The freedom of any individual carries within it the seed of a free and complete community without government. A free society that lives in organic and decentralized totality, united in its pursuit of the great human goal, anarchist communism. Oh, this guy, he's good. He's really good. God bless Nestor Mac. No, I don't know how to describe him. 1921, there's a photo, I can't show you this, but. So I think that's a good way to end this, to try and have a positive note, given that we're living in a war in Europe and on the edge of a world war with people threatening to use nuclear weapons. I mean, fuck off. You know, fuck off, you fucking wankers. I mean, like, it's time to topple these people and run things ourselves. And I reckon, because I speak to lots of people about these anarchist ideas these days, and more and more people are going, yeah, you're right, you know, you're right. Everyone's fed up of having the fucking piss taken out of them. So here's to all my Ukrainian anarchist brothers and sisters, and I really hope that they're managing to do whatever they need to do to survive. And it goes out to everyone who's suffering. I mean, there's probably a lot of Russian soldiers shitting themselves right now, you know, because I've no doubt that Russia probably draws its paid army from the poorer areas and poorer estates of the country. So those kids have got no other prospect, those young lads, have they? And they're all high on testosterone. And I'm a soldier. They've probably been... Anyway, it's not for me to get into the political sides of either side or whatever. The point is that until we get rid of all governments, this stuff is never going to stop. So it's not about one side or another, it's about the people versus capitalism. So there's my rant. I'm sure everyone's feeling anxious, worried, worked up, angry, upset, distressed by the idea that war is here yet again on our planet in quite a big way and quite a worrying way at the moment. So we all need to stay sane and take some inspiration from these anarchist words, you know, because it's through each single one of us deciding that we're going to fight for true liberation and then joining together and then being ready to fight that we stand a chance of actually doing it. And it's happened in lots of places before. People say, oh, anarchism can't work. Well, George Orwell said, people say anarchism can't work, but I've seen it here in Catalonia. That was like 1937, was it, for the Spanish Civil War, when he joined the International Brigade against the fascist regime of Franco and all that. And also in Kurdistan. The Kurds try to run everything on pretty much a flat hierarchy level, so everyone gets a chance. And the military is exactly the same. There are female units that fight alongside the men, and they're known for being just as, courageous and useful in battle. You know, busting that myth that women can't fight or whatever. So the Kurds, and also their political decisions, they kind of have running on a fairly flat level. So, and the Kurds, don't forget, the Kurds in this last few years have basically extinguished the threat of ISIS, destroyed the caliphate piece by piece with some support from US missile strikes. But I think they came in pretty late on. You know, the Kurds did all the hard work. The anarchists cleared the fascists. The biggest fascist problem we've had in a long time was that ISIS and their so-called caliphate. I mean, the stuff they were doing was outrageous. So there are lots of examples, and there's loads more around the world. Pockets of people in Mexico and all sorts. Italy has had a strong... Spain, you know, every single country has had a strong anarchist past if you look at it at certain times. And most of the Animal Liberation Front are anarchists. It's not essential to be part of the ALF to be an anarchist, but nearly everyone I met is. Barry Horn certainly was. I mean, that was one of the things we got on so well about, was the anarchist element of it all. So, yes, the rant. I'm going to draw it to an end now. So, here's hoping that we can head towards some sort of longer lasting peace at some point. Take care.